Babysitting my niece, Mia, was never supposed to be more than a simple evening. My sister had asked me to look after her vibrant 6-year-old daughter in their house. I planned a night of pizza, cartoons, and games to keep Mia entertained. The evening unfolded with a warm, joyful atmosphere as Mia and I dived into an adventure right in the living room. We were architects of our own imaginary castle, stacking couch cushions with strategic care to build walls and towers. Pillows became doors, blankets transformed into roofs, and laughter echoed like music through the air. The fort we constructed was a monument to our creativity, a cozy stronghold against the imaginary beasts and villains of the night. As we stepped back to survey our handiwork, pride swelled in our chests. It was more than just cushions and blankets. It was a testament to the fun and bonds shared between uncle and niece. In the midst of our celebration, Mia suddenly grew quiet, her usual bubbling energy dialing down to a serious, contemplative silence. She edged closer, her small form barely making a sound on the soft carpet. Her eyes, usually sparkling with mischief and joy, now held a depth of secrecy and gravity that was uncharacteristic for such a young soul. She glanced around as if to make sure we were truly alone, despite the fact that it was just the two of us, surrounded by the fortress of our making.
"Uncle?"
she began, her voice a hushed whisper that seemed almost too loud in the sudden quiet of the room. The way she said it, with a weight of importance and a touch of apprehension, immediately caught my attention. I leaned in, my curiosity piqued, wondering what could possibly be so significant.
"I need to tell you a secret about my doll, Rosie,"
she continued, her small hands clasped together as if holding the secret physically within them. Her gaze flickered to the side, towards where Rosie sat propped against a pillow fort wall, her porcelain face illuminated by the soft glow of the lamp, giving her an almost lifelike appearance.
"She moves when we play hide and seek, but only when we're not looking,"
Mia finished, her voice dropping to a near whisper, imbued with a mix of excitement and a hint of fear. It was as if she was sharing a piece of forbidden knowledge, something mysterious and potentially dangerous. The statement hung in the air between us, a surreal claim that seemed to warp the cozy atmosphere of our living room fort into something more ominous. Rosie's presence, previously innocuous and simply another toy in Mia's extensive collection, suddenly felt imposing. Her silent, glassy gaze, seeming to watch us with an intensity that hadn't been there before. I tried to maintain a composed exterior, not wanting to alarm Mia or feed into the eerie tension that her words had woven into the fabric of our otherwise cheerful evening. Yet, internally, I couldn't help but feel a shiver of unease, a visceral reaction to the idea of inanimate objects moving of their own volition. To diffuse the thickening air of mystery and keep our spirits buoyant, I let out a light-hearted chuckle. "That's quite a story, Mia. Dolls moving on their own, huh?" I aimed to infuse a hint of skepticism into my tone, hoping to brush aside the eerie implications of her words with a dose of adult rationality. It was just a child's imagination running wild, I told myself. A story spun from the threads of countless fairy tales, and perhaps a bit too much sugar before bedtime. However, before Mia could respond or further defend her claim, the room's atmosphere shifted dramatically. Max, the family's golden retriever, who until now had been the picture of canine calmness, suddenly erupted into a frenzy of barking. His transformation was instantaneous and startling. From lying peacefully by the hearth, he sprang up, his muscles taut, fur bristling along his spine as if electrified by an unseen threat. His eyes, usually warm and filled with the simple joys of dog life, now bore into Rosie with a sharp intensity, a deep growl rumbling from his throat. It was a sight that sent a chill down my spine, seeing Max, the gentle giant who feared nothing more than the vacuum cleaner, now standing as if facing down an intruder. His barks echoed off the high ceilings, filling the room with a sense of urgency and alarm. His gaze remained unblinkingly fixed on Rosie, who sat undisturbed and inanimate amidst our pillow fort, her painted smile and unseeing eyes suddenly taking on a more sinister cast in the flickering light. This abrupt shift in the dog's demeanor was completely out of character for him. Known throughout the neighborhood for his affable nature and an unshakable calmness, even in the midst of the most chaotic children's birthday parties, Max's current state was unnerving. The dog, who could usually be found wagging his tail in hopes of a belly rub or a treat, now stood alert and defensive, as if protecting us from a danger we couldn't perceive. In an effort to reclaim the evening from the grips of the unsettling atmosphere that had descended upon us, I decided it was time to shift gears. The clock had stealthily advanced, its hands now indicating the late hour. A silent signal that Mia's bedtime could no longer be postponed. "All right, Mia, it's about time we get you ready for bed," I announced, injecting a note of cheerfulness into my voice, attempting to brush aside the lingering shadows cast by our earlier conversation and Max's alarming behavior. The dog, as if sensing the change in focus, reluctantly ceased his barking, but continued to cast wary glances toward Rosie. His body, however, relaxed slightly, a sign that perhaps the immediate threat he perceived was no longer his main concern. I led Mia, who seemed both reluctant to leave the scene and tired from the day's adventures, up the stairs to her room, her steps slowing as we moved further away from the living room and Rosie's silent vigil. Once Mia was settled in bed, her eyelids heavy with the weight of sleep, I couldn't help but revisit her tale in my mind. The image of Rosie's unmoving form, juxtaposed with Max's visceral reaction. It was a puzzle that my rational mind struggled to piece together. Yet, for Mia's sake, I donned a mask of calm, tucking her in with her favorite blanket and ensuring the nightlight cast a soothing glow across her room. "Good night, Mia," I whispered, hoping the night would bring her pleasant dreams rather than fuel her fears. Descending the stairs, the silence of the house enveloped me. a stark contrast to the laughter and playful shrieks that had filled it just hours before. The living room, now dimly lit by the muted glow of the lamp, seemed to hold its breath, waiting for something to break the stillness. That's when I noticed it. The absence that made my heart leap into my throat. Rosie, the porcelain doll that had been at the center of the night's eerie turn, was no longer where we had left her. The spot by the coffee table, her makeshift throne within our cushioned fortress, was conspicuously empty. A surge of disbelief and apprehension propelled me into action. I scoured the living room, lifting pillows and peering behind furniture, but Rosie was nowhere to be seen. The sense of unease that I had tried to suppress earlier came roaring back, amplified by the doll's inexplicable disappearance. My mind raced with possibilities, each more implausible than the last. Could Mia's stories hold a kernel of truth? Was Max's reaction more than mere animal instinct? With frustration nipping at my heels and a growing ball of anxiety in my gut, I embarked on a thorough search of the house. Every shadowed corner, every silent room became a potential hiding spot for Rosie. The logical part of my mind insisted that there had to be a simple explanation. Perhaps Mia had moved the doll herself earlier. Or maybe I had, unthinkingly during our play. Yet, as each potential hiding spot yielded nothing, my frustration grew, edged with an increasing sense of unease. My footsteps on the carpet, a lonely sound in the quiet. Every shadow investigated, every possibility explored, led to the same conclusion. Rosie remained elusive. The comforting normalcy of the living room, with its familiar furniture and the soft hum of the refrigerator from the kitchen, felt like a stark contrast to the surreal search I'd just concluded. I collapsed onto the sofa, a sense of weariness enveloping me. The television, with its promise of mundane reality and distraction, beckoned. Perhaps immersing myself in a late-night show or a mindless movie would offer a reprieve from the evening's oddities. As I flicked through channels, finding solace in the glow of the screen, I tried to let the frustration and anxiety ebb away. The television's chatter filled the room, a welcome intrusion that pushed away the silence and the lingering questions. For a moment, I allowed myself to get lost in the trivialities on screen, hoping to dull the sharp edges of my curiosity and concern. It was a temporary escape, a way to pause the spiraling thoughts and the uneasy feeling that had taken root in the pit of my stomach. As the monotonous drone of the TV began to blend into the background, a flicker of movement caught my eye, snapping me back to the unsettling reality of the night. There, in the semi-darkness of the hallway, sat Rosie, perched on the stairs leading up to Mia's room. My heart seized. Just moments ago, I had scoured the house, including that very staircase, finding nothing. The sight of her, so unexpectedly placed, sent a shiver down my spine. How had she gotten there? The question throbbed in my mind, pulsing with a rhythm of deepening confusion and dread. With a cautious approach, I moved toward her, my steps hesitant as if the space between us was charged with an invisible tension. The doll's eyes seemed to follow me, glassy and unblinking. Reaching her, I hesitated for a mere second before lifting her from her spot. Her weight felt familiar in my hands, the cool porcelain of her face contrasting sharply with the warmth of my skin. Rosie's dress, a faded shade of what once might have been a vibrant blue, rustled softly as I turned her over, searching for any hint of mechanics or trickery. But there was nothing. No hidden buttons, no battery compartments, not even a wind-up mechanism. She was, in every aspect, a regular, lifeless doll. The craftsmanship was exquisite, with painstaking attention to detail in her features and clothing, but utterly devoid of anything that could explain the evening's eerie events. It was as if the doll before me was mocking my search for answers, her painted smile a barrier to the truth. Turning the doll over in my hands, I felt a mix of frustration and disbelief. The logical part of my brain struggled to assert itself, to rationalize the situation with explanations of forgetfulness or overlooked details. Yet, the undeniable reality of Rosie's inexplicable movement from her previous location to the stairs was a puzzle that defied simple solutions. Exasperated, and at my wits' end, I allowed my frustration to take hold. With a swift motion, more forceful than intended, I tossed Rosie back onto the floor, her porcelain body landing with a soft thud against the carpet. The action, though momentarily cathartic, did little to ease the tension that had wound itself tightly around my heart. Drained from the evening's relentless mysteries and the emotional toll they exacted, I collapsed back onto the sofa, my body sinking into the cushions, as if seeking refuge in their familiar comfort. The room, lit only by the flickering images from the television, felt both claustrophobic and eerily expansive, as if it had taken on a life of its own. My eyes, heavy with exhaustion, fluttered shut, and I surrendered to the pull of a restless sleep, my mind a whirlpool of unanswered questions and shadowed thoughts. Sleep, however, offered no escape. It was fitful and fraught with unease, a shallow drift in a sea of swirling anxieties. Then abruptly, I was jolted awake, a visceral reaction to a sensation I couldn't immediately place. The room was dark now, the television silent, its previous glow reduced to nothing more than a ghostly afterimage. And there, in the oppressive silence and darkness, I felt it. A weight on my chest, heavy and suffocating. My eyes snapped open to the nightmare made real. Rosie was sitting on me, her glassy eyes locked onto mine, unblinking and devoid of warmth. The moonlight filtering through the window cast her features in stark relief, shadows playing across her face, giving her an almost macabre animation. Panic surged through me like a tidal wave. A primal fear that seized my limbs and set my heart racing. With a gasp, I scrambled backwards, a desperate need to put distance between myself and the doll fueling my movements. But in my haste, my foot caught on the edge of the coffee table, sending me tumbling to the floor in a clumsy heap. The shock of the fall momentarily disoriented me, and when I managed to right myself, frantically searching for Rosie, she was gone. Vanished as if she had never been there, leaving no trace of her presence save for the imprint of terror she had etched into my mind. My heart continued to hammer in my chest, each beat a loud echo in the silent room, a clear indication of the fear that Rosie's unimaginable deeds had stirred. Just as I was grappling with the shock and confusion, the unmistakable sound of the front door creaking open sliced through the tension-laden silence of the house. The normalcy of such a sound, one I had heard countless times before, now seemed foreign, a jarring intrusion into the night's surreal events. My sister stepped into the dimly lit entryway, her presence a stark contrast to the darkness that had enveloped me both physically and mentally. With my heart still racing and my breath coming in short, sharp gasps, I rushed to meet her. The need to share the night's terrifying experiences overwhelmed me. Words tumbled out in a frenzied cascade, my voice trembling as I recounted the bizarre occurrences that had transformed an ordinary evening of babysitting into a waking nightmare. I spoke of Mia's unsettling tale, the dog's uncharacteristic aggression, Rosie's inexplicable disappearance, and the chilling climax of finding the doll perched atop my chest, staring with those glassy, unblinking eyes. As the story unfolded, my sister's face drained of color, her expression morphing from initial confusion to dawning horror. The light from the hallway cast shadows across her features, accentuating the growing fear in her eyes as she absorbed the magnitude of what I was saying. The atmosphere between us became charged with a palpable tension, the air thick with unspoken dread.
"But we got rid of that doll days ago,"
she finally whispered, her voice quivering with a mixture of shock and disbelief. The words hung in the air, a chilling revelation that added layers of complexity and fear to the night's events.
"After some incidents,"
she continued, her voice dropping to barely more than a murmur, as if afraid to give voice to the memories. She wrapped her arms around herself, as though the very recollection of those past experiences sent a shiver through her. The doll, it seemed, was not just an object of childhood fancy, but a vessel for something unexplainable. Its return to the house, a mystery that defied logical explanation. My sister and I searched the house together, a sinking feeling in our stomachs. But Rosie was gone, vanished as if she'd never been there at all. The fear, the confusion, and the unanswered questions formed a heavy cloak around our shoulders, a weight that promised sleepless nights and uneasy glances over our shoulders.